Good heavens, did not expect that. Greetings, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you are here. Today's nonsense is in Historic, and we are trying to get some wins with Davriel, the Soul Broker. Really sweet card, one of my personal favorites, largely because it's Davriel, and I'm a big fan of Davriel. But, you know, we're also doing a little bit of, you know, being aggressive in the format, but also interacting. I think that is a good place to be right now. So Davriel, a removal spell. Hagra Mauling, one of our lands, and a removal spell. Murderous Riders, removal spells. Sap Vitalities, removal spells. Inquisition of Kozilek can be a removal spell, but of course, you know, it's hand disruption. And then just the fact that we have Death Touch. Death Touch means that our creatures will trade well, and of course, Rotting Regisaur is not Death Touch, but darn it, it's a 7/6 for 3. It'll typically trade pretty well, or just block, or not trade, just kill our opponent, you know? And we also have kind of Sap Vitality here to grow all of these things as well. So being a removal spell and then growing, let's say, our Murderous Rider that's also hanging out in our hand, making it a 5/3 means it's a very legitimate threat. And that is kind of what's going on here with Blade of the Oni. We just want a really aggressive 2-drop that can get our opponent dead as quickly as reasonably possible. And as a 3/1 menace, that will do the job. It can also occasionally equip and become a 5/5 to kill our opponent. Knight of the Ebon Legion is just a really strong 1-drop to allow us to start getting aggressive early, and Phyrexian Reclamation to keep returning our creatures from the graveyard to our hand. So, let's see if we can get some wins, huh? Alright, folks, here we are up against D Medici, and yeah, I think this hand is fine. We're going to go ahead and keep it. We have an Inquisition on 1, and some Blade of the Oni for a clock, and some interaction in the form of Sap Vitality. Murderous Rider, also a pretty good draw here to continue to interact. Oh boy, looks like our opponent is doing some kind of life gain, Angels stuff. Has a little bit of Facebook in here as well, presumably. Maybe it could just be the Book of Exalted Deeds, admittedly. You know, it fits right in getting free creatures sort of thing, but we elect to take Voice of the Blessed, and our opponent goes to Speaker of Heavens. We then elect to get down our Blade of the Oni, because it's going to enter tapped anyway, and hopefully start pressuring their life total. Opponent does indeed run out the Book of Exalted Deeds crash in for 1, going to 23, but keep in mind, our Blade of the Oni is menacing, right? And I mean that in more than one way, right? So, opponent has the Youthful Valkyrie. We just respond by killing the Speaker of Heavens, and then using Davriel to kill the Angel. Of course, now we have a Blade of the Oni on board, and a Davriel on board. Our opponent has 3 pieces on board, but all of them are kind of supporting pieces, and none of them are very good here as far as impacting the board. We have some interesting here. Iganjo, Seed of the Empire, going to kill off our Blade of the Oni means we suddenly don't have a clock at all. It was tempting temporarily just to run out the Murderous Rider as a 5/3, because a 5/3 will end the game pretty quickly. But we do end up deciding, yeah, well, the interaction is good, and our opponent isn't clocking us either. So they add Yori into hand, and are thinking about casting it. They do, but they don't even have anything to blink, so it's not a big deal. They consider blinking things anyway, apparently, and we just go ahead and murder Yorion. Of course, Unlicensed Hearse, been spending this whole time exiling cards from the bin. It is now a 4/4. When it attacks, kinda nice, and our opponent says that's enough. GG, D Medici, GG. Alright, folks, it's Jagradus. Good luck, Jagradus, and yeah, I think this hand is fine. It does have 4 lands in it. 2 of them are Hagra Maulings, which is, you know, fine. Not overly excited, but not broken up about it either. Opponent starts on Forest Allosaurus Shepherd. Well, shoot. We were about to kind of hate our life a little bit, but we drew the Inquisition off the top. Feels very, very good, man. Gets the War Master out of their hand, but our opponent does have 2 Collected Companies. Not good news. Okay, so we briefly debate running out a Hagra Mauling just so that we can make sure to get Rotting Regisaur on 2, but change our mind and decide, you know what, the Blade of the Oni is just, you know, is good as well. So We doubt they're going to trade, but we want to give them the opportunity. You could give up 2 of your most important cards in your deck, a Lord and the Allosaurus Shepherd, for our Blade of the Oni, but they elect not to. We just slam a Rotting Regisaur. Turns out 7/6s are powerful. Opponent does have the 4th mana and the Collected Company. Keep in mind, folks, we don't really have board sweepers here, so our opponent going wide feels bad. We get rid of the Unlicensed Hearse. There isn't a whole lot of opportunity for that to do much here. Our opponent briefly debates taking a lot, just takes 3 instead. We slam Phyrexian Reclamation because there isn't much else we can do. Our opponent has the Collected Company, and boy, oh boy, are they ahead now. Crash in, we drop down to 2. We discard one of our cards, and that's the game. GG, opponent, GG. All right, folks, here we are up against Gonzaleric. And you may or may not be able to see very well, but there's a Davriel behind my shoulder. We elect to keep here, start on a swamp. Don't have a whole lot else to do, but our opponent is on mono red. No big deal. Let's go ahead and make a land drop. And pass the turn. Our opponent, considering things, has a mountain and a reckless ringleader. Comes down, gets a 1/1 counter, grants haste somewhere. Not ideal. Alright. And another reckless ringleader, granting more haste. Not great. Okay, but yes, that is great. We draw the Sap Vitality. Trying to decide which direction to go, we elect to go just with the Rotting Regisaur because it blocks really well. And we know our opponent has a lot of power on board already, but if they have a land drop and maybe we were worried about it being the Goblin or whatever, right? Chain Whirler, then we would want to be able to block. It's Karizev, which is probably worse. It's even more difficult to block, so our opponent shocks our face. Good lord, they are beating us down. Trying to debate how to go about it. Nighthawk Scavenger for lifelink would be really nice. Just interacting with Sap Vitality would be nice, you know? We elect to do a little bit of that. Trying to decide if we're supposed to run out the Hagra Mauling. Decide not to because removal can be really important in this matchup sometimes. And sure enough, Rampaging Frostodon comes down and it says you can't gain life. That is not ideal. Well, I guess the time for running out the Hagra Brood Pit does arrive after all because we could not draw a swamp. So we just slam it down, planning on Murderous Riding. Opponent takes a damage. We just run out the Murderous Rider because once they declare attackers, the Robber of the Rich would get a card, so we had to get our 3rd card out of our hand, you know. Down to 4 life, so we slam a Nighthawk Scavenger. We figure if they have removal for the Nighthawk Scavenger, we just lose anyway. But they're not going to suicide into gaining us 7 life. A lot of these lists don't run a ton of like 3 damage burn spells when they have this many creatures. A lot of them, you know, a lot of the creature heavy versions tend to go wider, right? And this is kind of what's going on here. And a lot of them will run things like shock and stuff, but, you know, it is what it is. Opponent does choose to suicide. Of course, we snap off the block knowing that there's going to be a Bone Crusher Giant or something, but we have a 7/6. That blocks very, very well. We also know we have a Murderous Rider coming down to gain more life. Should we need it, we go with the Blade of the Oni here because we'd have to discard it otherwise. And we're at 11. That's a healthy life total. Opponent slams a Torbran, which has haste. A little inconvenient. And I make a little oopsie there. I was supposed to equip the Blade of the Oni, and we had lethal. I didn't do it. I still think we're fine. We're at 11, but, you know, definitely a bummer. So, GG, opponent, GG. All right, folks, here we are. It's trick or treat. We're going to go ahead and see if they have anything good to eat. It's Inquisition of Kozilek on 1. We see Negate, Tainted Indulgence, Growth Spiral, and wait, what? That's Phyrexian Obliterator. Oh, no. Okay. Opponent has their own Inquisition, and that is also not great. Oh, boy. Trying to decide what to go for. I don't blame them. A lot of these cards are inconvenient for our opponent. They do get rid of the Murderous Rider because it very cleanly answers Phyrexian Obliterator. We're not pleased about that at all. But we just hang on for dear life, so to speak, and go for a Rotting Regisaur. Not sure if the Unlicensed Hearse is going to be good in this matchup or not, because it's kind of nice exiling cards when they're trying to run Tainted Indulgence, and if they're doing Tainted Indulgence stuff, I have to wonder, you know, maybe there's some self-mill shenanigans in here or something. What are they doing with this Phyrexian Obliterator, though? You have to have a reason to run black, 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 black in a 3-color deck, you know? And I am really unsure what it is that they're up to. But Trick or Treat, trying to do something spicy very clearly. And we have a little bit of a difficult spot because Sap Vitality is removal, but it's garbage against Phyrexian Obliterator, obviously. So we crash in for 7, kind of nice. Trying to decide if we want to do the Unlicensed Hearse thing or not. We elect not to, because if they have removal for Rotting Regisaur, we just get it back with Phyrexian Reclamation, right? If the biggest problem here is our opponent can, or, you know, we would have to discard or whatever. But our opponent took the Murderous Rider out of our hand with their own hand disruption. Now we have the option to discard, and we could discard the Murderous Rider and get it right back if we wanted to, which we do elect to do, holding on to the Unlicensed Hearse because we're concerned our opponent might have an answer to it, you know? And sure enough, there is a Hagra Mauling on our Rotting Regisaur. We were trying to hoping to tempo our opponent out, considering we're on 3 lands. Admittedly, our opponent also kind of stuck on lands just a little bit. So we're not, you know, having a monopoly on mana troubles. But our opponent does find their extra mana. We just react to the Tainted Indulgence by bringing Rotting Regisaur back to hand. Probably a little bit of an oopsie there. Honestly, this opponent was playing a little bit slow, so I don't think I was supposed to react there because they've already shown us hand disruption. They could have just had another hand disruption to strip it out, but I was shortcutting because they were being on the slow side. And I assume it's because there are lots of lines in this deck and everything. I'm not upset. Just, it is what it is, right? Opponent, having done a wee bit of looting and all that kind of thing, comes up with Bloodchief's Thirst to remove our Rotting Regisaur again, and does have the Boseiju to get rid of our Phyrexian Reclamation, which is a bummer. It was doing real work there. The deal is, we'd already gotten a good chunk of value out of it, and now we've got Nighthawk Scavenger to come down, and a Blade of the Oni to come down, right? Unfortunately, we see that our opponent does have that Phyrexian Obliterator. So we briefly decide, or try to decide what we're going to do here. And we go for the tempo play of, you got to have it now. You have to figure out a way to have it, because we have 2 menacing creatures that are unblockable and a flyer that's also unblockable. And they don't have it. So GG, Trick or Treat, GG. All right, folks, here we are up against Mauzera. Good luck, Mauzera. And yeah, we end up having to take a little bit of a mulligan there. Unfortunate. We're up against Elves. Also unfortunate. So we take their turn 1 Llanowar, trying to preemptively bolt the birds. They have Jespera Sentinel, which is not the same, thank heavens. And we take the Elvish War Master, trying to prevent them from going too wide. The problem is, they already have, like, a bit of board presence, and we are fresh out of interaction because of the mulligan there. Feeling not ideal. Opponent elects not to attack because they were worried about the things that we could potentially have. We are very pleased about that, and no, I'm just kidding. It was absolutely the Telegraph Collected Company, right? Yeah, and we are not happy about it. We are quite chagrined indeed, obviously. You know, trying to look for the upside and finding a difficult time locating it. You know, our opponent has a second Elvish Clan Caller. Against the mulligan, folks. Not feeling great. But our opponent crashes in. Oh, boy. This is something indeed. Trying to decide how to go about it. both the Clan Caller and the Allosaurus Shepherd are very good. We decided to get rid of the Clan Caller because that just buffing our opponent's stuff all on its own is liable to kill us, and we do have Davriel. So as it turns out, we draw in such a way that allows us to have the best opportunity at victory, I think. Where we get to strip out their last card and take away their final lord. They don't yet have enough mana for the Allosaurus Shepherd, but no, darn it, there's the Elvish Archdruid. Really need a land here, otherwise, or I'm sorry, a removal spell here, or we're going to die. We drop to 5, and it's Knight of the Ebon Legion. That's GG. All right, folks, here we are up against KKPRFX. Good luck, KKPRFX. We go ahead, make a tapped land for a land drop, an untapped land for a land drop, and get a Blade of the Oni. Our opponent goes with Stomping Ground tapped, and then Stomping Ground untapped to get a Scavenging Ooze onto the board. Well, fine. Let's try and punish that life total as best we can. Get a second Blade of the Oni down, and this time a Knight of the Ebon Legion to join it. And opponent goes with Crag Crown Pathway. Okay, well, Gruul Spellbreaker, a strong one to be sure, but we elect to get in. And our opponent blocks with the Gruul Spellbreaker. Good heavens, did not expect that. We were expecting to have to use the Murderous Rider on it. But we just figured, you know, what the heck. If our opponent presents us with the opportunity, we'll take it. And sure enough, they did. And so, similarly, we're like, do you want to die, opponent? And opponent exiles from the bin and blocks and blocks. These things are fine with us. We do decide to pump because what the heck, why not? Opponent drops to 2. They lose their Scavenging Ooze. Knight of the Ebon Legion just keeps getting counters up to a 3/4 now. And Questing Beast. That's good. But knowing what we know of our hand, it is not good enough. GG, KKPRFX. GG. All right, folks, we're up against Nee. Good luck, Nee. And there on the play, they get a Lunarch Aspirant on 1, or I'm sorry, Lunarch Veteran on 1, different card. We go with Knight of the Ebon Legion on 2, or on 1 as well. They go with nothing on 2. We have interaction prepared for our 2-drop. Do we run it on the Lunarch Veteran? No, we elect not to. Let's see what they play. It's Ranger, Captain of Eos. Inconvenient. Alright. And Soul Warden is the play. Gonna gain that life. And we're waiting around. We elect to fire off Sap Vitality. Opponent likely to sacrifice in response to both prevent the 3-0 and just might as well stop us from casting non-creature spells should the opportunity present itself. And briefly debate just pumping, because that's good. You know, scooting damage across, getting them away from their life gain thresholds. That 27, 28, you know, style area is very threatening. Yep, Sarah Senate shows up. 30, very threatening. Opponent has a Kabira takedown. Makes us feel bad about these things. We have a difficult decision there. Go with the Blade of the Oni to get rid of it. We still don't get another land. Highly inconvenient. Opponent blocks the Serra Ascendant, and not thrilled about that, but we do have a Nighthawk Scavenger. That is not so bad. Evasive threat, always good. Opponent has the Abiding Grace. Brings back Serra Ascendant, going to be able to start chumping things down, and we're forced to discard. Briefly debate which direction to go, and yes! Ah, yes. That feels good. Graveyard Hate in the Abiding Grace matchup is very, very strong indeed. We will pass the turn. And our opponent goes with Cleric class, which is also kind of strong, honestly. Yep. It goes into Heliod mode, where if they gain life, they get counters to get thrown around. And when they realize that we're going to use the Unlicensed Hearse, they realize, oh, my deck doesn't do anything. And they scoop them up. GG, opponent. GG. All right, folks. Here we are up against Synth Z. Good luck, Synth Z. We are Perfectly content with keeping this hand. Elect to go with Swamp on 1, but don't have a 1-drop. We'd prefer a 1-drop, but this is fine. Whether we go with Blade of the Oni or Gifted Aetherborn on 2 is up in the air. You know, there are reasons you might want to get the Gifted Aetherborn down, just to gain life, things like that. We see the mountain, and so it was tempting, because gaining life against the mono red deck is very, very good. But it's also true that they typically have burn spells to point at your creatures. So if we could gain, or if they're going to be using burn spells at our creatures, it would be nice to have them point them at Blade of the Oni instead of our Gifted Aetherborn. So we briefly debate and decide to get in. You know, you don't have infinite time against the mono red deck. It's true you don't often, you know, you don't find yourself in the beatdown position very often against mono red early in the game. They often are. And I don't think this is any different. But they presented us with an opportunity, and I felt like we had to take it because Gifted Aetherborn does block relatively well. So we're back in this spot. Briefly debating equipping the Blade of the Oni here. Making it a 5/5 Death Touch lifelink is very strong. It negates a lot of their attack. On the current board, it negates their entire attack, right? And it would highly incentivize them to just block to prevent this nonsense in the future. They, in fact, end up doing that thing. Opponent gets a couple of 1/1s for their trouble. Ugh. Feels bad. We end up taking that block, which I am decidedly not thrilled about. Briefly debate using Takenuma to get back, you know, Gifted Aetherborn, things like that. But decide to go with Rotting Regisaur because it blocks so much better. Might end up trading off the Knight of the Ebon Legion, just keep our life total high. So Kenzan comes down. Those do have haste, which is really good, but they're not red creatures. So they don't deal the damage. Oh, hold on just a darn moment. That's a good one. And trying to decide how to go about this. Our opponent, thinking about trying to double block here. Because they were thinking Torbran might aid them in killing it. That is not the case. But we felt like we needed to tax their board just to have a chance, right? If we just sit back forever, the time bomb is proverbially ticking here, right? Yep. Run out the Sap Vitality to kill the Den of the Bugbear before it makes a red creature. Kind of hoping they don't have a burn spell here. Because that could make things awkward. Torbran is mean, you know? Opponent just gets in. We decide to block that dude because it's blocking the most amount of damage, and we have to discard the Takenuma. A little bit disappointing, but fine. And we decide it's time to race, folks. It's time to race. Wait, what? Against the mono red deck? I mean, honestly, yeah. In this spot, I think that's fair. We're currently representing just 8 with what we see. We could pump it 3 more if we wanted. We elect not to and just go with the Davriel. Pop it down, shrink Torbran, get a counter on Knight of the Ebon Legion, and pass turn. Remember that 1/1 is not a red creature, and Torbran requires red creatures to deal, or red sources to deal damage. The opponent can use that 1/1 though to kill Torbran, which is just fine as far as we are concerned. A land here, believe it or not the end of the world, allows us to pump Knight of the Ebon Legion more than one time. Very, very good indeed. So, trying to decide how to go about this. Opponent is holding on to priority, thinking about what they need to do. We decide to just jam in, and they say, we can't beat it. So, GG, Sensei. GG. All right, folks, here we are up against Jessar. Good luck, Jessar. We're going to start on a turn 1 Knight of the Ebon Legion on the play. Don't mind if I do. Opponent goes with Watery Grave, though. That is scary. Almost any deck that has Watery Grave wants to see creature decks, and at the end of the day, we are that. We're mid-rangey, right? We're leaning on the power of Davriel and removal spells, things like that, but make no mistake, we're not ending the game without turning our creature sideways, right? So our opponent then goes Concealed Courtyard, and we're going, oh my goodness, this must be some kind of Esper deck, thinking maybe, you know, who knows, Doom Foretold or something like that. We elect to go ahead and just spend our turn 3 pumping. This is a lot of damage, really hoping it gets through, and sure enough, it does. That is very, very good indeed. Gets a counter onto Night of the Ebon Legion, and then, oh no, oh my goodness, we miscalculated. This is not Esper Doom Foretold, or Esper Control, or Esper Planeswalkers, or Esper whatever the heck, Rafine or something. This is Esper Reanimator, and suddenly I'm like, why was I not thinking about that? Admittedly, it's not the end of the world. We have the Unlicensed Hearse, and we wanted to get damage in so that the Night of the Ebon Legion could start getting counters. Right now, with 3 power on board, if we only hit for 3, like, that's a respectable clock. But Night of the Ebon Legion does not grow from going to 3, right? So, not ideal. That said, we just Gifted Aetherborn, get in, hold up Unlicensed Hearse. Yes, feels good. Opponent reading our Unlicensed Hearse, going, wait, does that do what I think it does? It does. It does, Jossar. It does. The biggest problem now is that they have a lot of, like, 6, 7, 8 mana cards. And they will cast those cards, and they will kill us with them if we don't get a clock going very quickly, right? We can stop them from reanimating them, but that doesn't stop them from just tapping lands and casting them, right? So we do respond to their Priest of Fell Rites activation by exiling not just the Sarah's Emissary that they targeted, but the Jin-Gitax as well. Opponent responds with Faithful Mending to draw 2, discard 2, gain 2, and you know, the game goes on. The deal is the Unburial Rites goes to the bin, which is a fine thing for our opponent to be up to, but there's not any more threats in there. We exiled the only 2 big threats, which means if they loot a couple more threats into there, we can exile those too, right? They've got to find a way to get like 3 threats, so they elect, no, let's just go with the interaction route. Take out our only clock, which is reasonable there. Then we go to the end step, exile their graveyard stuff, Takenuma, mill over a few things, briefly debate getting Davriel back, but just decide, oh, crud, no, we have Night of the Ebon Legion, that's great. And 6 mana, don't mind if I do. And I pump it just because I didn't want to keep getting priority from that, right? So, Unlicensed Hearse, I mean, I guess we'll exile those things. And briefly debate the Inquisition, trying to decide if maybe it was just better to pump twice. But then I realized, yeah, it doesn't really change the clock. This is fine. Let's play it safe. Do this thing. And put a counter on the Ebon Legion. Our opponent with Unburial Rites in hand, but no threats in the bin. Staring down the Unlicensed Hearse. And we crash in. Pump. GG. GG. All right, folks, we're up against Akane 91. Good luck, Akane 91. We're going to start on Night of the Ebon Legion and get down a Swamperino. Our opponent goes with Ancestral Anger on our creature, just for a target. They get in a Dragon Rage Channeler, slam it onto the battlefield. We briefly debate just Sap Vitalitying away the Dragon's Rage Channeler, but we decide, no, let's do it this way so that we can deploy our other Night of the Ebon Legion. Leave ourselves options. I'm still not certain that was correct. Their deck likes to go through millions and millions and millions of cards, and the surveilling from Dragon's Rage Channeler really, really helps that. So it's strongly possible this was the incorrect line. I don't think it's reasonable to call it an actual punt because, you know, I mean, it's a fine line to take. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. But I do think maybe getting rid of that was the higher upside line. As it turns out, they did have a very, very nasty card in their hand called Underworld Breach that can let them flash all of these cards back. So they're clearly trying to do Storm-related things. And here comes Dragon's Rage Channeler again. Well, we're going to get in with our creatures. Opponent allows it to happen, so we just pump. Why do we pump, folks? Well, because we can't interact with Dragon's Rage Channeler. We could get down on the Licensed Hearse, and our opponent does appear to be doing some graveyard stuff, but we have a pretty reasonable clock going on. We know at 20 life, it's unlikely we die this turn, maybe next turn, who knows, but probably not this turn, and they have to attack the Dragon's Rage Channeler, right? So getting a counter onto each of our Knight of the Ebon Legions means they will start putting counters on one another, because we're dealing 4 damage. So we don't even need to pump this turn, and they still get the damage. Indeed, we elect to do the thing. And 4 damage again, the threshold required. And now we're presenting lethal. The Dragon Rage Channeler must attack. So, you know, our opponent finds themselves in a bit of a spot, I think. And they're trying to debate on how to get out of it. We keep in mind, folks, those Blade of the Onis are now 6/1 menaces that we just haven't had the mana to deploy. Opponent Ancestral Angers. That's scary. It is a 6/3. Does a little bit of surveilling. Crashes through. Does a little surveilling and drawing and things. There is the Runaway Steamkin. They get in for 6. We drop to 11, but, you know, we're just not feeling threatened by that. So go on ahead. We present lethal. We can't realistically provide lethal because they can chump block with the Runaway Steamkin. But then they have to deal 11 to our face. And given what we've seen of their deck, it doesn't seem like a realistic goal because they have no cards in hand. They would have to do it all with 1 card. They will admittedly see quite a few cards, but I mean, yeah, it does not seem likely. So they sit there debating on whether or not they want to block with Runaway Steamkin. This is difficult because you don't want to lose, but you also can't want to win. And they finally decide that they can't win, so they scoop it up. GG, opponent. GG. All right, folks, here we are up against Dark Soul. And yeah, I think this is a fine hand. We have Knight of the Ebon Legion on 1. Sap Vitality on 2. These are just fine things as far as I'm concerned. Knight of the Ebon Legion crashes in for 1, down to 19 for our opponent. We sit at 20, despite their basic land. Oh, crud. That's an island. Expressive Iteration. Not cool. All right. Well, opponent does not get to play the land. So we just say, okay, well, here's a Rotting Regisaur. Can you deal with a 7/6? Dark Soul, can you deal with a 7/6? Stormcarved Coast comes down. And Faithless Looting. Well, that's a good start. If they can get Unholy Heat online, they can deal with the 7/6. Which, you know, we wouldn't be, you know, excited about. And Stormwing Entity shows up, does a little scrying. All right, goes top. That's not ideal. We get rid of the Takanuma, despite the fact that we kind of want that. And Sap Vitality away their creature, put it on the Nighthawk Scavenger, I'm sorry, and crash in for 10. Or I mean, knocking our opponent down to 10. Please forgive me. He's crashing for 8, knocking our opponent down to 10. And put the 3/0 on Nighthawk Scavenger. Opponent has Pillar of Flame for Knight of the Ebon Legion. Does not kill it yet, of course. And Spikefield Hazard, though, does finish the job. Now looking at 10 life. We get rid of the Davriel because we have a Nighthawk Scavenger. Feels good. Opponent does have the Unholy Heat, though. All right, well, inconvenient. We briefly debate holding up the bluff, but then decide, you know what? This is fine. Let's just pop it down. Opponent only has 1 card in hand, does have the Faithless Looting, does have Expressive Iteration, E-I-E-I-O. Oh, crud. A second Dragon's Rage Channeler, not ideal, but oh boy, Rotting Regisaur off the top is a good one. Trading here wouldn't be terrible because we go to 28, and that's kind of a lot of life, but we kind of decide we're already at a lot of life. We're at 20. They've got to actually, in order to kill us, they've got to do combat. They've already used a bunch of their removal spells. And the 3rd toughness is annoying for this deck to deal with unless they have an Unholy Heat. Well, shoot, man. Here is Finale of Devastation. Or, I'm sorry, Finale of Promise. doing a little surveilling, gets an Unholy Heat, but has to go after Rotting Regisaur because they were worried about just the clock that thing provides, right? And then Arclight Phoenix shows back up and crashes in? No. That doesn't seem right at all. I think they were supposed to block there. Or, I mean, hold the Arclight Phoenix back to block. Oh. It's because they have the stinking Unholy Heat. Yeah. Blocking suddenly felt a lot better there. Okay, well. Yes, folks, I recognize this is lethal. Next turn, and there really isn't a way out of it. But, you know, you never know. And we scoop it up. Inconvenient, Dark Soul. Inconvenient. GG. GG. Alright. Marty TB. Our next opponent. Good luck, Marty TB. We have a pretty reasonable hand here. We will need to draw another land. So we start on Inquisition of Kozilek. What on earth is going on here? Briefly debate taking the Incubation Druid because, you know, bolting the birds and all that. But we do have Sap Vitality for the first one, and if we decide to, we could even Murderous Rider the second one. Opponent does bolt in the Turn Timber Symbiosis for the Incubation Druid. Here, briefly debating Nighthawk Scavenger, but we decide to strike while the iron's hot and just Hagra Mauling as a removal spell because they haven't... So far, they've appeared to be mono green, but they haven't played any swamps. So, okay, well, how about we grow up our Nighthawk Scavenger and bolt the birds all in one. Crash in, drop them down to 13. We go to 24. Our opponent has a Nylea, Keen-Eyed. We get their Mana Tapper, and aha, it's Leyline of Abundance. That's what they're up to. So we jam the Nighthawk Scavenger, which is a pretty quick clock, and Marty TB scoops them up. GG, Marty TB. GG. All right, folks, here we are, up against Bodie McBoatface. Good luck, Bodie McBoatface. They start on a Leyline of the Void, which is, you know, fine, but not great. Oh, no. It's a Phyrexian Obliterator. Well, when your main win condition is Rotting Regisaur, you're never happy to see Phyrexian Obliterator. But, you know, we have plenty of spot removal, so we're going to try. Opponent has Baleful Mastery over there, which can be cast for the 2 mana. So we briefly debate how to go about this. We do decide to pump just to try and get the removal spell out of their hand, but they don't fire it off. So both Knights of the Ebon Legion get counters, which is kind of nice here. They do decide to fire it off now, so I feel like they were kind of hoping to hit their land drop and then just use the Phyrexian Obliterator Stonewall and then get us with Languish was the plan, I think. So yeah, we decide, let's not commit more to the board. Let's just crash in with this Knight of the Ebon Legion, knock them down to 10, make them have it. Sure enough, they fire off that Languish, which, you know, a reasonable thing to do. Wow, we hit him with the Inquisition of Kozilek and all 4 drops. 4-drop Trival over there, which is not ideal, considering they now have their 4th mana. Inconvenient. Alright, Boatface runs out for Phyrexian Obliterator, but fine. Blade of the Oni has Menace, our opponent at 7 life, and of course our Hive of the Eye Tyrant looming large over there, so we kill this one. Briefly debated just taking the 5 and letting it attack there, but I don't think that benefits us a great deal. So then we decide, yeah, well, Phyrexian Obliterators are very large and inconvenient, so we decide to shrink that one down and get it out of the way. It is now a 2/2, which is much, much less threatening. So we jam Rotting Regisaur. And for a minute there, I thought Phyrexian Reclamation, but then I realized, oh no, Leyline of the Void. So that's not helpful. Our opponent briefly debates attacking and then realizes, oh, if I do that, I die. So then we run out Davriel, shrink that the rest of the way, and crash in for 7. GG. Bodie McBoatface. GG. Alright, folks, here we are up against Schizo. Good luck, Schizo. And Blade of the Oni gonna come on down. And get ready to crash in there. Uh-oh. Sterling Grove. It's gonna have to be a quick clock indeed, so we jam that Rotting Regisaur. We draw our 2 of our unlicensed hearse against the deck that doesn't care about them. Not ideal. Opponent has Banishing Light for a Rotting Regisaur. Always feels bad there. So we just run out Murderous Rider, trying to get a reasonable clock on our opponent before they get 9 lives Solemnity. And of course, with Sterling Grove, it allows them to search for the other half. So whichever half they draw, they just go find the other half, right? Opponent goes with Sithis Harvest's Hand and our Rest in Peace. Okay, not ideal. Those unlicensed hearses are even worse than they were before, so we jam in with our Murderous Rider after giving it Menace and growing it up with the Blade of the Oni. Opponent drops 10, we go to 25. The problem is, this deck doesn't look to remove our life total until it's like way, way late in the game, and it doesn't matter. So our life total really doesn't matter, and their life total typically needs to be addressed much more quickly than what we're doing right now. So not feeling great about that. For those of you curious, I run out the unlicensed hearse because I was a little tilted about it. In retrospect, that was absolutely the wrong play. We have Rotting Regisaurs, and if we're going to have to discard cards, we'd like to discard useless cards. So this is a misplay on my part. Opponent goes to find their 9 lives, plays it out, draws cards, and do you have it, Schizo? Do you have it, Schizo? Always a bummer when you're just sitting there having to wait for them to have it. Oh no, darn it. So tilting. So the Sterling Grove, for the record, is going to go and find their other combo piece, so we do lose. Alright, folks. Daughter BB. Good luck, Daughter BB. Johnny's welcome. Come on down. Unlicensed hearse. Come on down. And opponent, back to their turn 2, has Temple Garden and a Soul Warden. We don't really have any interaction for that right now, which is not ideal, but we do have a 3-mana 7/6, which is pretty good. You know, their creatures grow pretty fast, but ours start big, so maybe it'll be enough. Maybe, you know, at least we hope. Daughter BB makes a land drop, goes with another Soul Warden. Inconvenient. They gain several life. Interesting. So we try and decide how to discard. End up going with Davriel. And slam a Rotting Regisaur number 2. Opponent gains a couple of life. Back up to 19. Somehow. We hit them with a 3-mana 7/6. And they have gained their life way back up above their starting life total now. Inconvenient. But they run out the Scurry Oak. We briefly are trying to decide how to deploy our hand because we don't have any interaction, and we're like, they're probably just going to combo us here. But if we can't interact with the combo, we might as well try and make it awkward if they don't have it. Because, you know, they could collect a company here. And that would be a bummer. And we probably lose, but not guaranteed to lose. Oh my goodness, they don't have the collected company either? They just had all Soul Wardens, Ajani's Welcomes, and Scurry Oaks. They were just trying to draw the last part of the combo here is all? Well, that's good. Opponent chumps with a Regi. Chumps with a Soul Warden. Takes 7. We play our land. And opponent has a land drop and a Cleric class. Folks, that does it. That is the backup Heliod. Only it doesn't. Because they don't have a way to gain life to start the chain. So we make a land drop, animate Hive of the Eye Tyrant, crash in. But even that was a little unnecessary because they have to chump with both of their creatures. So GG, daughter BB. GG. All right, folks. Calrandar, our next opponent. You didn't get to see it, but we had a rather unfortunate mulligan. And I was a little tilted about it, you know? Is what it is. Because one of those things where the hand we got back was less good than the hand we sent away or whatever. But it ends up being okay because we draw well, so no big deal. Rotting Regisaur comes down. Opponent takes 1 down to 18. And it's a 3rd land drop for Calrandar. Grakma. Skyclave Ravager. Alright, fine. Well, we go to combat. Get in there. This is a lot of damage. Our opponent does decide to chump block the Knight of the Ebon Legion to prevent some of the damage. We hit them for 7. Knight of the Ebon Legion gets counter, and they get a Grakma token. This is a lot of damage, folks. A lot of damage. Calrandar down to 11. We are technically presenting lethal here, unlikely as it is that that's going to work. You know, we are presenting lethal. Opponent with Valky grabs our Nighthawk Scavenger because they don't like the idea of us flying over top and all that. So we just bin our Rotting Regisaur and then try and decide how to go about it. We just get in with Rotting Regisaur. Opponent does the predictable thing and blocks. Well, fine. So we're going to do the predictable thing and remove the Valky. Get our Nighthawk Scavenger back. And pass the turn. Not going to play the land here because we don't want to discard the Nighthawk Scavenger. We want to discard the swamp. Opponent has Meathook Massacre X equals 3. Going to gain a life. Yep. These things are fine as far as we're concerned. So, combat. 7 damage. Opponent down to 5. Nighthawk Scavenger. Come on down. It's just a 2-3, but darn it. It is both lifelink and death touch, and it's on the board, which is definitely meaningful. So if they have a spot removal spell for our Rotting Regisaur, we are still clocking them, and they're at 5. That is not infinite. Oh, crud. What on earth? Karn the Great Creator, coming on down, goes on over to the sideboard and scoops them up. GG. Opponent, GG. Back, everyone. We are back. We are back. And yeah, you know, we had a great time. We had a great time. I did eventually make Mythic with this deck. We even recorded it, but the editor decided that it was not interesting enough gameplay and cut it. We did, you know, obviously cut some other games in there as well. Some losses, a couple of wins as well. And just try to show games that hopefully were interesting, you know. A little bit longer today because we are off at DreamHack. So definitely appreciate all of you wonderful folks giving me grace while we're disrupting all the schedule and everything. As far as how the deck did, yeah, deck is great. Honestly, it's you know, right around 60% win rate style deck. Relatively well positioned. It interacts well. It, you know, clocks relatively well. Things like that. So I would not hesitate at all to draft something like this if you were you know, historic junkie like myself. And I would encourage you to fool around with the Graveyard Hate. The Unlicensed Hearse has been fine. We were running some Go Blanks for a little bit. We even ran some Leyline of the Void, stuff like that. I wouldn't say I am settled on which one is the best. The Unlicensed Hearse seems really good, but it's also, you know, really struggles in a lot of matchups in this particular deck. So I'm really not sure, but I would be anxious to hear if you folks end up having different results than that. As far as other things you might do, maybe another Phyrexian Reclamation could help. I don't know where you take it. Keep in mind there's a little bit of a non-bow with the Nighthawk Scavengers and Unlicensed Hearses, or Graveyard Hate in general, but I really feel like we need the Graveyard Hate. And I also really like that this is both flying and advances our game plan with the lifelink, as well as growing very large in some matchups as well. And then we can also Sap Vitality onto it. It's also really nice. So the non-bow, not a huge deal. That said, if you folks do end up having a lot of success or anything like that, definitely let me know and tell me what changes you decided to make. In the meantime, I do have a Twitch stream. Appreciate it if you folks would send over there, or would go over there and drop a follow. If you're here and you haven't subscribed yet, darn it, I really appreciate it. It's a big help to the channel. So thank you all, and I will catch you next time.